begin with everybody, if you make a brief statement as to your relationship to the Caribbean American voice. Okay, so is that, for example, my relationship is that as an elder now, I was raised in Detroit, Michigan, and I was raised under the emphasis of the colonialism that we have all experienced as descendants of the enslaved people from Africa. I knew nothing about the Caribbean voice, in other words. Okay, and except that somehow they were not as good as, which of course is colonialism at its best. So that was my relationship to it, and it's good for change. Okay, so let's go right up down.
Hi, my name is Candace Thompson-Zachary, and I'm actually probably the only non-playwright on the panel. Oh, right, you're an actor, right, there we go. I'm a dancer and like cultural producer. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, born and raised, and I've been working in New York City producing and promoting Caribbean dance and the importance of Caribbean dance to our identity and how we congregate, how we come together, how we solve problems, but also how we I guess stay centered, stay grounded, and how we build community through movement and through choreography. And so I guess that's my relationship to the Caribbean American voice, mainly through dance and what it does for us.
So my name is Melanie Nicholls-King. I'm supposed to sound like that, but I don't. Because my family's from Trinidad. But I left Trinidad when I was 5, and my mother, as is usual for the Caribbean, went to Toronto first, found a home, created a home. I stayed with my grandmother and my aunts and uncles, and then came up when I was 5, and basically grew up in Toronto, and then moved to New York 20. It's like the number keeps getting bigger and bigger every time I say it. 20 years ago, and but I grew up in a Caribbean household. My parents are both from Trinidad, and so I grew up with the music, I grew up with the food. We went to Trinidad for our summer break, you know, where people go to the Hamptons and and all these other places. We went to Trinidad. And so that's my roots. And you know, when people, because I'm always complaining about it's so cold, and people are like, but you're from Toronto. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. My family's from Trinidad. I complained to my mother, why did you leave Trinidad? I live in Toronto. Could have gone to Miami. But anyway, so that is, so it's inside of me. That is my connection to the Caribbean.
Hi, I'm Pascale, Armand. I'm an actor and newly turned playwright, working on my very first piece, like Magaly said. I'm Haitian American, and I've had a response to what the president said about when he made his statement. The name of my piece is Shithole Country Clap Back. So, because I can't let it just die. Even though I understand people like, move on with their lives. I mean, it's just like, sticks and stones, yeah, whatever. But if people understood Haiti's history and America's history and how they are both of them are inextricably linked, then President Dumbass would be looking at himself in the mirror before he called somebody else a shithole. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Myra. I'm from the Bahamas, and I've been in New York about 5 years, but I immigrated to the United States in the late 90s to study abroad, and unfortunately for my mother, I have not come back home permanently, but I do go back and forth like 5-6 times a year. I'm home a lot, and I work with Haitian artists back home as well, and so I'm just very excited to be here, and I am also a new playwright, so hey girl.
And I just want to make another comment, which is that we still have a lot of work to do to unite as descendants of the enslaved people. And there's just not enough, in my view, enough interaction between people who are descendant, who are North American, these words, right? And people who are from the Caribbean and everywhere else, in terms of Black people together, acknowledging each other, working together, promoting each other, supporting each other.
I'm Nancy Mendez-Booth, and I'm a first-generation Nuyorican. And I guess like a lot of Puerto Ricans, my relationship to the island has been very fluid. I grew up going there every summer, so it's only a 3-hour plane ride. So my, I guess, identity and life has always been, in so many ways, very fluid. But yet, so much of my work and my life experience has been trying to figure out what my identity is, because I feel like I'm not necessarily embraced by either place, and it's just, it will continue to be a lifelong journey of trying to define what is my voice, where do I belong, and yeah, so thank you for accompanying me on my journey.
My name is Monique A. Robinson. I am first generation Jamaican American. I would say that my connection to my Caribbean voice comes through my grandmother and my grandfather and my mother, who are all storytellers, griots. And so when creating this play that I came up, I try to reach back into my roots of being young and hearing my grandmother talk about living in Jamaica. My grandmother was born in 1914. So the evolution of how the island has changed and the pride of the people, and try to connect that to my finding a sense of pride as an American here, but also as a hyphenated American at times, and using that to inform my work, always as a storyteller first. That's it.
Hi, my name is Amina Henry, and I'm a first-generation Jamaican American. And I think for the past several years as a writer, I've been more and more trying to dig into both sides of what that might mean, what it actually means to be a Jamaican and what it actually means to be an American, and the complications that arise from that. I'm just gonna throw it out there that actually my mother is very much a Trump supporter, and I don't talk to her about it because I love her too much.
Looking into Taino women. The Taino women, Tainos were in Haiti as well, and the myth that they were all killed off by Columbus's men, myth. So there are many Taino women who led battles against the Spaniards, so that story has to be told on stage and screen.
What comes to mind when you say what I want to see is, I think there's a character that I remember when I went back to Guyana a few years ago, that I heard about. Her name was Madame Olindi, and she was a vaudevillian performer, and this was like in the 1920s, and she was doing things that women are doing today, but she was doing it back then, and they could not handle Madame Olindi. She was a choreographer, she was a singer, she was, she went on the, what do you call it when you go all over the country with men, because there were no other women doing what she was doing at that time, and she was like the first vaudevillian act, female vaudevillian act, and the community was up in, they were freaking out. I would love to honor her. Yeah, tell her story.
I've been thinking about it. If this is like such a, I'm sort of overwhelmed by the question a little bit. No, because I don't think it'll help if I have more time. So, I think I want to write about all the women. I mean, I want to write about my mother. She's still alive, so we'll see. But I want to write about my grandmother. I want to. There's a man who. So I have a second cousin who has a child by a man that I know, and he actually has 8 children by 6 different Jamaican women, and I want to write about those women, and I want to write about sexuality as it relates to women, and I want to write about the LGBTQ plus community, because I feel like there's a lot of complexity around that in Jamaica and the Caribbean in general. I want to write about, I mean, I have a tendency to write about women anyway, and I think that's because I was raised by women, my family was very matriarchal in a lot of ways, but at the same time, even though the women in my family were quite powerful, they weren't at the same time. So I want to write about that, if that makes sense. I also want to write about Nanny of the Maroons. I just haven't quite figured out a way to do it, but I do want to write about that because she was such a revolutionary and she fought against imperialism, and that's so amazing. So I don't know her actual name, but so I only know her as Queen Nanny, and she was a warrior for the Maroons in Jamaica historically, and fought against the Europeans who were colonizing Jamaica, and she managed to really push back in quite a lot in her time, and she was a military hero, and I don't think she's really the only military hero that I can really think of off the top of my head who was a female. So I'd love to write about her as well.
Like you said, I'm interested in writing about a lot, but particularly secrets that women within, I'm just talking about my family, that we don't share with each other. The things that are held with family secrets, particularly with Caribbean women when it comes to mental health, he talks about that, is that there is a stigma behind it, and there's a shame. And there's something that I would definitely want to explore. And with playwriting, I've been wanting to learn more about my family and my grandmother, because she's a woman who's very reserved, and I want to write her story of what it was like being on the island for about 96 years and seeing the different changes throughout the time, from being a member of the PNP party to coming to America to going back, and her struggles with mental illness because it was, you don't talk about it, or so-and-so left the island, we don't know what happened to them, they went to school but they never went to school. Because that was, if your name held title, if you were a part of the government, it was a shame on the family, so that person disappeared. So wanting to know what her journey was coming to the States and what she went through to become herself is something that I'm particularly interested in. Marcus Garvey finds a way in all of my work. In the play that I have, which is Wade in the Water, I have Lieutenant Garvey, who is a testament to him and is the American version, and I've been definitely toying around with what if he didn't pass and he was trapped in a matrix and came back to 2020. What would he have the same point of view? Would people think that he was radical? Would he be able to still be a leader in a very Trump era? And how would that, the return to Africa and the yearn for the diaspora to come together, is that still valid, but who would pick up the banner? And how would he coexist in this time is something I've been playing around with a lot.
So, my struggle is never trying to find stories. My struggle is always the fear of, I believe that I'll run out of time before I get to tell all of the stories that I want to tell. So, like a good type A, I've tried to multitask. So I am focusing, or the next area of focus, I plan on having it be my mother and her sisters, because in a very traditional Puerto Rican family that grew up, in El Campo, the countryside, my grandfather had 5 girls and only 1 son, and he had to wait to go through all of these daughters before he got to the son. But yet, this was quite progressive for someone with his circumstance, and at that time, he encouraged all of his daughters to go on to school, to go on and get higher education, and to have careers. which, you know, I just think that that's kind of extraordinary, that and kind of groundbreaking. So I want to explore like that story. And, you know, my grandfather had to kind of like put up with some, you know, like some chisme, you know, like some people criticizing him, saying like, why would you waste all this time and money on girls? But yet it helped our family go forward so much. So looking at my family's story, I started to realize that we're really not that unique, not just in Puerto Rican culture, but in many cultures, that it's very often like these, like in my family, short-haired, really tough women who get things done and keep the family together, but their stories often don't get told. And then even expanding the vision broader, as I'm reading more on Puerto Rican history, I'm kind of blown away by like these, you know, by these women who have not really been written about, but who have played such pivotal roles in Puerto Rico's various struggles for, you know, independence and to, yeah, and I mean, women who deserve to have their stories be told, and women who deserve to be part of history. So, long answer, I'm going to start with my family, but then I start to realize, hey, you know, this didn't just happen with the Marreros. This is like across the island, but it's also across all of the islands, and it's kind of like across the world.
I myself have been fascinated with these pictures about these detention centers, and seeing these pictures of guards who are Latino and African American, and who are guarding, separating, and people of color. And that's their job, because they're desperate for their jobs. So that's been the play that I've been working on. And I'm very interested in writing about Nona Judge, who was Martha Washington's favorite slave, and who ran away from the Washingtons once Washington was elected the first president of the United States, and how he dogged her for the next 25 years. Something, I don't think HBO is gonna do anything, but anyway, that's a historical figure that I'm interested in.
I am very interested in exposing the hypocrisy of the Bahamian culture. We are very conservative as a nation, uber conservative. We more than likely wouldn't vote for Trump, but every value that is conservative is predominant in the Bahamas. And we spend a lot of time basking in how liberal we are, because we don't know the definition of being liberal. And so, for example, there's been two referendums on making it illegal for husbands to rape their wives. And the people in my country have agreed that it is impossible for a husband to rape their wife. And so that referendum has failed twice, because there's no such thing as spousal rape, because the Bible says so. And people went and voted for that. But at the same time, it'd be like Obama and not conservative. And so those kind of ironies I would really like to expose for my people, so we can have a clearer mirror of who we really are, and realize that we might not be as bad as something, but we aren't perfect either. And Bahamians are very good at being like, we're the Bahamas, we're pretty cool, and we're not always. And so that's a story I'd be interested in telling.
A story that I want to tell. I am doing all of my historical research and explaining a lot of the historical, Haiti's historical past in Shithole Country Clapback, the play that I'm currently writing. I've run across lots of historical figures who were female, who also helped with the Haitian Revolution, like Magaly was saying. They were instrumental in the Haitian Revolution, not just the the Haitian Revolution that was started with the voodoo ceremony, and not that woman is very important as well. But there was also the woman who taught Dessalines, who was the first ruler of the Free Republic of Haiti, taught him how to fight. She was a slave, and she basically took care of him on the plantation and taught him how to fight, which also has historical beginnings in the fact that they, those slaves, Dessalines and Grantoya, which is her name, came from the Kingdom of Benin, and they were part of the female army that guarded the king in Benin. They were called the Aguji. Lupita Nyong'o actually did historical research, like, you know, National Geographic like documentary about it, where she went to Benin and she went there and looked into them, and also saw that one of the symbols of one of the things that they did to show reverence to their country and to their king was Wakanda forever. So, being that there were like historical beginnings to the symbolism that we're seeing in a movie that, you know, like made so much money all over the world, also having a whole bunch of black people in it, starring in it, I never want to hear anybody say that black people can't rake in any money in the movies, because that's for damn sure not true. But all of these women who guarded the leader of their tribe, that also moved into Haiti by the time, you know, the slave trade happened and people ended up where they did. And so one of them was a woman who actually taught the first ruler of Haiti how to fight, how to win in the War of Independence that got Haiti its freedom. It's always just so very funny to me to always hear about like the men, Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Christophe, Pétion, all of these men who, like, you know, upheld Haiti and fought for liberation, but no one pays any attention to the women who are behind those men. And so I think I'm looking into researching more of this character, Grantoya, this woman, not character, but this woman, because there's a saying in Haiti about the potomita, that's the middle pillar. Without this middle pillar, whatever structure you have will fall apart. And women in Haitian society are always considered to be the potomita, like, you know, the woman who will make sure that her children eat, you know, and their stomachs stop being distended from hunger, but she's starving herself and everything. And that's a wonderful, I guess, sacrificial, you know, like there's that maternal love that a woman has for her children, her country, the patriotism that she holds for it, but is not recognized for it. So, I don't know, I feel like I want to consider bringing that to light.
Thank you. And for those, what story do you want to encounter? What kind of script do you want to receive as a story that will express your Caribbean voice?
I think personally the stories that I have lived. So I, like I think other panelists, my mother left to go to Toronto to create a home for me, and so I was without my mother for a number of years, not as many years as the other person on the panel or other people that I know and love. And but the feeling of abandonment that I live with because she left, even though I know that she left to make a better life for me, there is that sense of being left. And I think a lot of Caribbean children of my generation, that is what happened, is that your parents left to create a better life. And so I would love to see that and to see that exploration of how you attach again after that kind of loss. And also another thing that's personal to me, and I'm sure to a lot of Caribbean children, is many half siblings. It's funny, like talking to white people, and you're like, "So, how many brothers and sisters do you have?" And I'm like, "Well, I actually have about 8, but I only grew up with 1, and 1 I've never met, and so it's that kind of, and I'm lucky enough to be close to, even though I didn't grow up with them, my younger sisters, and so that kind of family dynamic is not shown in the mainstream. So I would love to see that Brady Bunch, right?
So I'm from the dance side of things. I think stories that I want to, or I don't know, expressions that I want to see on stage are part of the work that I've been doing for the past few years. If anyone knows me knows that I'm obsessed with carnival, I'm obsessed with soca. And I've always found ways in my choreography to bring soca and carnival culture to the stage. I'm also trained in ballet and modern and contemporary dance, and I've done lots of work at companies in that realm. But to me, what we do in the Caribbean as part of our culture that perhaps I feel like we take for granted, we take for granted everybody could whine, and we take for granted everybody could chip, could do some compa, could do some zouk, that we don't give it the same level of importance, and we don't give ourselves credit for the technique and the kind of mastery that it takes to look and give that feel of what our dance culture is. So I try to bring that to the stage. And the next piece that I'm probably working on is thinking about soca and carnival as a spiritual experience. So that's something that I'm interested in. And in terms of historical figures, I think, like a lot of, I guess, people who grew up in the Caribbean and then come here, it's like, and then you become like the Trini's Trini, you know what I mean? Like, like you're like holding on to things that people in Trinidad are like, we don't care about that anymore. But I think being here made me more curious and made me take my culture, I think, more seriously, and that's why I've done, a lot of research and basically gone into producing, because I wanted to see some of the stories that I was interested in on stage and through dance. But what it also made me interested in were the people who had lived in New York for years and years and years, or who were Caribbean American, who had been also keeping spaces alive for Caribbean performance and Caribbean culture and Caribbean dance. And whether they were like trained formally in dance or not, but they were making space for those things to stay alive. Right, exactly. So and we know some of the bigger names: Jeffrey Holder, Pearl Primus, Catherine Dunham, even though she's not West Indian, but has done a lot for Caribbean culture in terms of bringing it to the main stage. But I'm also interested in the people that we don't know, the people who've been teaching in a public school for 30 years and producing a show on the side, that have created a whole new generation of people who are now like researching Caribbean culture and bringing dance to the stage. So my interest is in looking at those more local figures who are holding space in a really important way and giving them their due.
Thank you. Well, I could go on. I want to go on. I wanted the audience.
So how, I can have my own summary of this conversation. The question is, what is this?
The question of what is distinct about the Caribbean American voice, I can have my own summary of it, and since we don't have any more time of it, I'm going to ask you to summarize it. If you do not want to. For me, what it sounds like is, it's something you ain't heard yet. You need to listen up. You need to listen up, it's coming. It's coming down the pike, and it's juicy.
Well, I do want to,
Yes.
is that there is a wealth,
Yes.
untapped,
Yes.
being tapped, finally.
Be released.
Finally, being released. And we are so lucky, because all of us are being provided with what our grandparents and parents did not have. in the way of accessibility and awareness of each other, and the enrichment that survived the horrors of enslavement and of the slave trade. So that's my summary.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, ladies.